For my choice of music, I chose Brad Meldau's Anthropology off of his album When I Fall in Love, released in 1993. The album's personnel consists of Brad Meldau on piano, Mario Rossi on bass, and George Rossi on drums. The composers of Anthropology, originally titled Thriving from a Riff, were Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker, although Parker claims that Dizzy had no part in writing it, which was true for a lot of Dizzy Gillespie tunes. It was first recorded in 1945 under a band led by Charlie Parker. It is a contrafact of the tune I Got Rhythm by George Gershwin, of which so many contrafacts have been made that its chord progression is just referred to as rhythm changes. It is also in AABA form. Brad Meldau was born in 1970 in Jacksonville, Florida, and lived there until his family moved to Hartford, Connecticut when he was 10 years old. His father was an ophthalmologist and his mother was a stay-at-home mom. He had played music since he was a child, as there was always a piano in the house, but as far as I know, his parents were not musicians. He initially only played pop songs on piano until he took classical lessons, which he continued for 6 years. Around the age of 14, he started getting into jazz, like listening to John Coltrane and Oscar Peterson. He ultimately credits Keith Jarrett's solo playing with opening his eyes to what could really be accomplished on the piano. In high school, he had weekly gigs at a club and also played many events and weddings. He often played with his classmate Joel Fram, who actually went on to be a professional saxophone player in his later career. In his junior year of high school, he won Berklee's Best All-Round Musician Award for students, and after graduating high school, Brad went to study at the New School in 1988. He studied under pianists Fred Hirsch, Junior Mance, and Kenny Warner, along with drummer Jimmy Cobb. In 1989, he played with Christopher Holliday's band for several months. In this band, he learned how to channel other great piano players such as McCoy Tyner and Wynton Kelly, and he also gigged with his teacher Jimmy Cobb on drums. Brad Meldau's career started in the 90s in New York and has played mostly in a trio format, as can be heard in the piece Anthropology. His early version of his trio, which is featured on When I Fall in Love, is composed of himself along with Mario and George Rossi. They only recorded 3 albums together, and they were his first 3 albums. He then trades Mario for Larry Grenadier on bass, which became the main trio he's been known for. They recorded together over 7 years on 7 albums, including his well-known Art of the Trio album series, after which he trades George Rossi for Jeff Ballard in 2005, after over 10 years. He has done some large group recordings with chamber orchestras, as well as many duos, including an electronic album with drummer Mark Juliana named Meliana Taming the Dragon. I would highly recommend this album to anyone who is interested in electronic music or jazz fusion. It's a really good album. His playing and soloing style is very compositional. He's very influenced by classical music and is able to improvise contrapuntally, which is having 2 lines go in the opposite direction on the piano. He's also able to develop themes with great authenticity and intention. Brad's influence on jazz is really incalculable. He is noted for bridging the gaps between genres and bringing in things like classical music, as he does in his album After Bach, and has also claimed to further develop some of Beethoven's music. He credits his love of classical music to his initial piano teacher, before which he had been listening to the music of his time, such as Led Zeppelin and Stevie Wonder. He still retained his love for rock music, as shown in his album Largo. Now his influences range from Thelonious Monk to Radiohead, as he plays both of their tunes on the bandstand. I think that his voice as an artist has also affected many minds as to how jazz is perceived and thought of today. He is quite the intellectual and has some very developed opinions on what music is, and leaves a very extensive liner notes in his album. A quote from his interview with Mike Brannon really spoke to me. Quote, "I understand life is marked by certain primary experiences that happen early on that involve pleasure, followed by the pain of being disconnected from that pleasure, and the rest of life spent trying to make sense of that pain. That first moment of disconnection is like a shattering of glass that rings in your consciousness for the rest of your life, informing everything you witness and experience. It's that shattering that leaves the mark, I think, not the experience of pleasure itself. Nostalgia is trying to beautify that moment when everything shattered and broke, trying to make sense of the pain. Music is heightened nostalgia. Music is that lost pleasure in a continuous process of being shattered. It's like this beautiful thing being held in front of your face that disintegrates if you try to touch it. End quote. This quote really speaks to the depth and authenticity through life experience that Brad brings to the music. He claims to meditate on greatness and has an appreciation for all art, which he brings to his music. I think it's through his openness to all genres of music, combined with his appreciation for all things great, that create the amazing music that he makes today, and have contributed to the innovations that he has made in his playing that will influence musicians for generations to come. Enough about Brad. Mario and George Rossi, Mario who plays bass and George who plays drums, both moved from New York to Barcelona, moved to New York from Barcelona to pursue their careers in music. They are brothers and were some of the first people that Brad recorded with, and vice versa. George went on to have a very successful career in jazz on the New York scene, playing in Brad's trio for 10 years, and also with names like Ethan Iverson, Kevin Hayes, Albert Sands, Mark Turner, Chris Creek, Seamus Blake, Joshua Redman, Kurt Rosenwinkel, and Steve Swallow. And as for the style of the song, it's very rooted in bebop. It's a bebop tune. Brad plays this melody the same way that Bud Powell did when he recorded Anthropology, with both hands and octaves. And Bud Powell was one of the first beboppers on piano. Brad's solo is also very bebop-y, as he keeps the octaves until there's a big transition and release into a more relaxed swing groove, after which he continues to keep his solo within the bebop vocabulary with some modern flair. There is some avant-garde-esque playing, like when the drums play every third beat, delineating the time. It's also called a hemiola. There are two solos, a piano solo and a drum solo. The piano goes first and is the main course of the piece and takes up most of the time. The drums follow and lead us to the head out. The reason that I chose this piece is because I've been listening to Brad a lot and I really enjoy his playing. His touch on the piano has a very crisp sound that I enjoy, and his solos have a depth and story to them that is very unique and complex. His playing also has a number of influences, including classical music, and I really enjoy the way that he combines the intellectuality of classical music with the authentic presence and rhythmic embodiment of jazz.